how do I keep my sanity and well, and faith, I guess you have to say. Well, because it's the right thing. I'm sticking for the truth and what's right. So just because everyone is doing something doesn't mean that to say that it's right. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people, or some people can't see it.
I don't want to get rich off of the collapse of society. It's not anything I want. It's just the only thing that I can do. And I'm sure you feel the same way. And yeah, we'll get through this somehow. And anyone who understands what we're saying on a deeper level, time to act is now. And if you don't get it, then buy Tesla. Hey guys, Ralph here from the Endgame Investor, and this will be my second interview of getting deeper into the people behind the gold and silver movement, the gold and silver investors. Who are they? Where do they come from? What do they think? What gets them into this movement in the first place? So you have more of a picture of the people behind the ideas. And this week we have Maneco64. He has a great YouTube channel. He probably, more than any other gold and silver investor, market analyst, commentator, is responsible for getting me on YouTube and getting my name out there. So I have a lot to thank him for. And we have a lot of comment, but there's a lot I don't know about him, so I'm going to be asking him.
Yeah,
So hi, Mary, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Rafi, and you?
I'm all right. The first question I wanted to ask you is, you strike me as a very cosmopolitan guy. You speak Brazil, you speak Portuguese, you speak French, probably German too, English. How many languages do you know, and where have you been? It seems like you've been all over. And what kind of experiences you have that relate to where you are now? And that's a general question, but how did you get here?
Yes, the languages, I guess I started when I was about 9 or 10 in Brazil. I was born and grew up in Brazil. My dad was from an Italian family, my mom Portuguese. But yeah, in Brazil we speak Portuguese. And but I started having French lessons when I was younger. Not at school, like private. My parents had a friend, their wife, his wife taught French, so I started learning a bit of French. And then I went to Switzerland for 2 years in boarding school, and there I learned French really well. And then the second year that I was in boarding school, I decided to go to the English section, and that's how I learned my English. And then when I went back to Brazil, I went back for high school, well, eighth grade, and then high school. I kept taking French, but then there weren't any more classes because I was advanced, so I started learning German at school as well. And yeah, the more languages you learn, the easier it is. And I went to university in Florida for 2.5 years, and then I transferred to a university in Switzerland, in Geneva, because my parents moved there by the 80s. And yeah, and that's how I got my languages. And I would say, yes, I've lived all over the place, but I've been in London or the UK since 1992. So I have been here for a while, probably more than half my life almost now.
Mhm. Wow. So you were in Florida. Where in Florida were you? I'm from Miami.
Yeah, I know you're from Miami. I was in Winter Park, which is Central Florida.
Oh,
Rollins College. I don't know if you heard of it.
I haven't actually. I've heard of Gainesville, University of Florida.
Gainesville is like University of Florida, but
Yeah.
Rollins College is Central Florida. Yeah, just north of Orlando.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so in a previous in my first interview with Greg Hemke, I mentioned my story, so I won't get into it again, of how I came into the gold and silver markets and how I just decided to scrap the entire monetary system and go after the core of what I think all the corruption in the world is, which is the money, because the money is the fuel to it all. How old were you when you came to this realization? Do you have a point in your life where you realized that it was all corrupted and that really it was a manipulation of the real money, which was gold and silver? And how did you get there? And what do you remember from that transformation? How old were you?
So it was in around late 1999 to 2000, 2001, around that time. So I was around 35, 36, so relatively old. I mean, my father back in the late 80s or early 90s, he bought some gold. Uh, but at the time, gold wasn't doing nothing. And by the time it got back to the price he bought, he just got rid of it. He was frustrated with it, as many people are a lot of times. And but the reason I got into gold, even though I'd been working already in the markets and in the city of London for over 10 years, was that I started looking into the Austrian School of Economics, and also, and what spurred me onto that was reading Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I think I read that around 1999, 2000. It took me a while. It's a big, long story. And the reason I read that book is because I play golf. And at the time, there's a really good golfer called David Duval. And I read a story in the magazine about him. And they asked him, "What's your favorite book?" And he said, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So I read that book, and it got me into the free market. Um, looking at Alan Greenspan, the Austrian School of Economics. That's how it evolved. And then in 2002, after the dot-com bubble, my private pension got hit quite hard. And my wife and I thought, well, why don't we just buy some gold? So I decided to buy some Krugerrands. I wish I bought a lot more at the time, because they're only 220 pounds an ounce, or just over $300. So bought my first Krugerrands. How did that come about? Well, I was working in the city. So the internet as well helped, because with the internet, you could search for a lot of stuff. I found the Mises website. I found LouRockwell.com during that time, and I read a lot about libertarianism. And all the time, it always went back to gold, the gold standard, and something I didn't even know about before, even though my degree at university was partly economics. They don't talk about gold and the monetary system too much. They will only, in passing, professors will say, well, in 1971, Nixon took us the dollar off the gold standard. And that's all they'll say. They don't explain why and the repercussions from it. So yeah, the internet helped. And also I have to say, buying my first gold coins and holding them is like special. And I found a jeweler in the city of London that dealt in bullion, and he had really good prices. He was just like a dealer, and his jewelry was really nice too. So I bought the Krugerrands, took him back to the office, and we used to play when the markets were quiet and it was boring. Let's say on a Friday before non-farm payroll, after lunch in the UK, it was really quiet because people were waiting for the market. So we would play spoof, the game with 3 coins. It's called spoof. And the day I bought the Krugerrands, I didn't tell anyone, and I started playing spoof with my coins, my Krugerrands, and my colleagues went, "What is that, Mario?" I said, "Well, it's a Krugerrand." And I showed them around, and some of them said, "Oh, I want to buy some." So that's how it started.
I mean, you've been in the investment industry and bonds. I know you have a big background there. And I would
Yeah.
imagine that the environment there is like competition. It's like selling any kind of product or real estate or whatever, and you're trying to climb over each other and get commissions. From what I've seen in the gold and silver movement, or the group of people that tout gold and silver and bullion coins and whatever, whether it be Peter Schiff or Andy Shepman or whatever, we seem to be, even though we compete with each other for audience and views and clicks and sales and whatever, I don't feel any sort of competition with anybody here. I feel that we're all on the same team, and we're just trying to get the word out to people to save themselves. And do I know for sure that gold and silver is going to do it? I don't know for sure, because maybe everything's going to be confiscated. I don't really know exactly how to protect everything against every possibility. I can't do that. But what I can say for sure is that the monetary system is at the core of everything that is corrupt today, whether it be morality or thinking, or medical policy. We all know what that is. Government spending, war. It's all the same core behind it. How would you relate to what I'm saying here? That we're really all on the same team. And we're trying to get people to help each other, and that, I guess, that makes us ideologues rather than investment people who are looking to make a buck off of gold and silver. Because really, we're not. We think we're going to, but that's not what we're really into, which makes us ideologues in the real sense.
Yes, I mean, when I worked in my professional career, I started out at a small private bank in Switzerland, and that was compared to the city of London, it was a very calm, civilized environment. My bosses, they were really nice people. It was a small company. They used to, for all the employees' birthdays, they used to have cake and champagne at the end of the day for that person. So it was really different than the environment in London. And if you work for a bank or a brokerage house, yes, there is. If you don't write the tickets, so to speak, you don't last very long. And the competition is there, but there is a separation. For example, big brokerage I worked for, this desk will cover government bonds, this one interest rates, this one index futures, and this other desk options. So you do separate that. But yes, did I try to sell just anything to my clients? And my clients were institutional clients. So I always try to give them my thoughts about trades. I wasn't that pushy. If they asked me my opinion, I gave it to them. I used to use other brokers. They just wanted to do the trade. That was the way they worked. And it's all about relationships as well. If you get along well with your clients, they'll give you the business as well. But in terms of what we do in the gold community here on YouTube, when I started out, my goal was to educate people about the monetary system. Like how you said, the system is not honest. You don't have honest weights and measures. And if you don't have honest weights and measures in money, the whole society will go downhill, because half of all transactions, commercial transactions, be it between individuals or between an individual, government, or company, half of it relates to payments, because unless you're giving something to someone, you usually exchange for, and it has to be for money. And if the money is bad, eventually the society will go bad. And I think the United States, for example, and Europe and the UK, we've been on a downward spiral since World War I, especially here in the UK and Europe. US has been a little more gradual and didn't really start in 1914, because in 1914, a lot of the European countries, they just reneged on sound money because of the war. They couldn't have fought for 4 years if they had to pay it with real money, gold or silver. But in the US had the fortune, if you want to say that, to have accumulated 2/3, I think, of all the monetary gold reserves by the end of World War II. So it has had a lot of credibility, so to speak. But I think ever since 1971, of course, that started to shrink or to evaporate, that credibility. And yes, it's becoming more and more pronounced. I mean, all the symptoms of the money going bad are showing up in the first world or Western world. And one of the reasons I can see this probably is because I grew up in Brazil, where we had that problem while I was growing up. I could see it there. I could see that there's a few that had quite a bit, and the majority that had nothing, and many that were lived in abject poverty. And I can see that happening now. But yeah, when I started my channel, I just wanted to educate people uh, on the fact that we're going that way. I started back in late 2015. And I mean, I'm not trying to prove anything that I'm right or wrong about the market, right about the market. It's where gold is going to go. But I used to focus on gold. That I used to say, in my opinion, it's good to have some gold and silver. And a lot of people asking, where can I get it? So I give them like, what I told them is do your homework, look for the best deals, look for reputable dealers that have been in the market for a long time that you can trust. And then I also gave him the option to deal with people that I know. So yeah, I wasn't trying to just some people say, oh, you're shilling gold and silver. No, my objective here is to give people information about the system, and also maybe talk about the markets a little bit, what I think is going on, even though the markets, they've been so uh, manipulated that it's very hard to yeah, it's very hard to like kind of predict things. Back when I started in the late 80s, early 90s, things were a bit more normal. Central banks weren't doing what they're doing now. We actually had for example, the 3-month euro lira, the Italian currency contract, futures contract, that was trading below 90. So it meant that the 3-month interest rate in Italy was above 11% in the early 90s. I remember 3-month euro dollar deposits at 7%. So yes, the markets were more in charge. You had real interest rates. The central banks weren't interfering as much. But nowadays, you get a first whiff of trouble, and yeah, the markets, even the markets will go a certain way to beg the central banks to do something. So it's getting harder and harder. And I also try to cover subjects that I would have talked to with my institutional clients in the city, but with the general public. And I found that a lot of them appreciate that. So that's what I try to do. And like you, nothing in life is certain, but one thing is certain: fiat currencies, they go to zero. And like you said, they could confiscate our gold, they could lock us down, which they have already. But I'd rather take my chances having some gold and silver, because yeah, it's better than having nothing, I would say, if you can afford to stack. It's good insurance.
Um, so lately, I mean, I have 5 kids, thank God, and I've had to take them out of school because there are certain policies that are going on now that I think are a danger to my children physically, and I can't really trust the institutions anymore. And I've had to now. My wife has lost her jobs, but thank God, my business is getting better, so that's compensated, so everything's okay. But generally, when I wake up in the morning now, I have to remind myself that this is the world now, and I have to deal with it. And it's difficult. It's difficult seeing a way out of this, other than pushing through it and knowing that we have to get to the bottom. But I don't know exactly how the bottom affects me. I mean, Israel especially is turning into a serious police state, even more so than it's been, and it's been doing that since the early 90s. But how do you deal with the reality of the world today, not lose hope in the waning sanity of people who might have used to be your friends and you can't communicate with them anymore. I'm seeing that more and more. It's hard for me to talk to people that don't see things the way I do, and I'm also finding new people who do see things the way I do, but that I never knew about. Um,
Yeah.
how do you handle daily life under these sorts of crazy conditions while maintaining optimism?
Yeah, it's not easy. And I guess I've been kind of, if you want to call it, fortunate in a way, because I left the city in 2012. Um, the firm I worked for, they shut down the desk I worked at, and made me redundant. That was the first time in my life I was uh, made redundant or lost my job. And I decided to open a business, and that didn't go badly, but it didn't go well either. And that took about 2.5 years out of what I could have done maybe in the meantime. But it was a learning experience. And then by 2015, uh, yeah, I decided to start doing my YouTube videos. I had tried before that a few months to go back to the city, had interviews. A lot of times the interviews went well, and they said, "Oh, you have too much experience," which is like a euphemism for maybe we want someone younger. But anyway, it wasn't easy. And I never thought back in late 2015 that by now I'd still be doing YouTube videos and that I'd have uh, at 56 or 57,000 subscribers and 10 to 20,000 views regularly. And it's not even the numbers that are important. It's more the community and the uh, communicating with the viewers and meeting people sometimes as well, like you. It's been really great. And when they instituted lockdowns last year, it didn't make much difference to me because I do this from home. But one difference it's made is for my family, like my extended family. My mom and my sisters, they're in Switzerland, and it's been kind of impossible to go there with the rules they have now. And even if I had been double, you know what,
Mhm.
right now, I think there's quarantines for people from the UK going to Switzerland. And also my wife and I, we just started traveling a bit more in the last few years after the business closed down. It wasn't, we could have traveled, but we wanted to be careful with our finances. And then things picked up. In 2019, we went to Italy, to Florence, and we were saying, oh, we want to go to Venice next year and travel more. That's how it's changed. But apart from that, um, yes, it's frustrating. I have a daughter. She's an adult now, so it's her business. So in a way, I'm lucky that I don't have young children, because I wouldn't want to have to put them through the misery that they're putting children here in the UK in schools, and so that it's hard to deal with it though. I was talking to you prior to the our interview started. It just
Mhm.
seems like people are going crazy. They're doing things that doesn't make sense, and I feel more and more in a smaller minority of people, even though I think it could be bigger. We're made to believe that we're a very small minority, but I think it's bigger. How do I keep my sanity and well, and faith, I guess you have to say? Well, because it's the right thing. I'm sticking for the truth and what's right. So just because everyone's doing something doesn't mean that to say that it's right. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people, or some people can't see it. So
Mhm.
that's how I go about it. I mean, in terms of friends, yeah, for example, at my golf club, most people there, They buy into what's going on, but I have one good friend of mine, probably my best friend there. He actually thinks like me, so that's a good thing. And there are other people as well. I guess you just have to try to. It's difficult, but online though, on Twitter, on here, there are a lot of people who think like us. But unfortunately, it's becoming harder and harder to meet in person.
Yeah. So my last question is, we were discussing before we started recording the overlap between certain medical issues and gold and silver. I haven't really met anyone in the hard money community that is for medical force of any kind. We seem to be on the same page with monetary freedom and medical freedom and any other freedom that that affects life. And I don't think that is a coincidence at all, because I don't think, I mean, the way the gold and silver markets act, only an ideologue would be interested in investing in these things, because they very rarely turn out the way that you imagine or you dream, and they don't make. The only way that gold and silver can really make you rich in real terms is if everyone else is poor because they don't have it. And that's the sad reality of it, that we are on the one hand, we're doomsdayers, and we're saying the whole world is committing suicide, and on the other hand, we're still optimists because we know what's right. So basically, what I'm saying is that this is really a liberty movement, and we're just monetary libertarians. And that is really, even if someone doesn't understand gold and silver, if they understand liberty, they can get it pretty quickly. But if they don't, they think that, oh, $10,000 gold just means it's going to cost more to buy a wedding ring. But we know that $10,000 gold is going to be serious problems for all of society. And that's the tough idea that we're trying to communicate without freaking everybody out.
Yeah, I always like to reference Howard Buffett, Warren Buffett's father. And I know Warren Buffett is not a friend of gold, or so he says, but his father wrote or gave a speech, I think, to a Chamber of Commerce back in 1948. And he was a congressman from Nebraska. And he said, you can't have human freedom without gold redeemable currency, or gold-backed money that you're able to redeem for a fixed weight of gold. And I think he's right. And why is that? Well, because if you have a sound monetary system, and politicians and bankers start acting irresponsibly, you can always withdraw your gold from the banks, and it makes interest rates go higher because you withdraw money from the system. They're able to less expend credit, and that's how I look at it. And yes, for me, it's much more than just investing. Maybe not so much the mining stocks and the gold and silver miners, but yeah, gold and silver, I see it more as also not every ounce of gold and silver that you have outside the system is one less ounce that the bankers and the politicians can basically leverage to enslave us. So yeah, I see it more as a philosophical thing, not just investing. And I realized that pretty much when I first bought gold in 2002, because I used to follow the market very closely. I wasn't working in the gold precious metals market, but I was working in front of a screen the whole day watching markets. I watched gold, and I sensed right away that there were patterns, like gold always used to drop after the COMEX opened at regular hours in New York. And I could see it right away. It was very frustrating. It took about 3 years after I bought gold for me to see the price of gold in pounds go anywhere. It stayed like 220 to 250 for 3 to 4 years, but eventually it's zoomed up to like 600, 700. And that's the way I think it works. You need to be really patient in the gold and silver market, because for years it will languish, and then all of a sudden in a few months it just goes through the roof. And if you're not there, you're not going to participate. So I would say to younger people who believe in honest weights and measures, and that gold and silver are a good place to be for their savings, that patience is also really important. And I know we only live once, so to speak, but yeah, I think there's plenty of time. Maybe not so much for me, uh, even though there is. I'm 57, but for someone who's in their 30s and even 20s, I mean, that's really, you've got so much time. And yeah, you've got all the time in the world. And if you learn about what I learned from my mid 30s before that, I think you would be okay, hopefully.
Right. I don't think it's gonna I don't think it's gonna take 20, 30, 40 more years. I mean, the last message I'll leave the viewers with is this, that yeah, gold and silver are about honest weights and measures, right? And you could counter, yeah, maybe, okay, so paper money and really these money substitutes that are inflated over a real gold supply, they all draw their money from gold and silver. They always have and they always will. Um, but you cannot have a society that is based on dishonesty forever, because if a society based on dishonesty is based on lies, and the more you want to steal from the populace through the inflationary process, the more you have to lie to them, and the more brazen the lies have to become, until they become just so ludicrous that nobody can possibly believe them and the entire system falls apart. So, just like all positive feedback loop systems, they go in one direction and they have to go there faster and faster and faster until the whole thing explodes. And if you look at the money substitute supply of all currencies, of euros, of dollars, of yen, of the Israeli shekel where I am, and I'm sure the pound also, we're in the parabolic phase now. Exactly how long this lasts, I don't know. But this seems to be the end stages of it, and it's never been a global thing. So yeah, if you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, even your 50s and 60s, I'd say you have enough time to get rich off of this process. And I really I don't want to get rich off of the collapse of society. It's not anything I want. It's just the only thing that I can do. And I'm sure you feel the same way. And yeah, we'll get through this somehow. And anyone who understands what we're saying on a deeper level, time to act is now. And if you don't get it, then buy Tesla.
Yes, and if I could say another thing is that yes, if we do benefit from this monetarily or wealth-wise, I think yeah, it doesn't mean to say we're not going to go out there, personally, not me, and buy a Lambo. That's the difference between, I think, the precious metals people and the crypto people. If anything, I'm trying to help more and more people maybe avoid the collapse and maybe even benefit from it. And when it does happen, maybe be able to help people, because I think helping people is, you get a lot back from helping people, I think.
This is Rafi, the Endgame Investor. The Endgame Investor, if you want to support me, please sign up at the link in the description below for a 2-week free trial. Check out Mario's great YouTube channel. He talks about different subjects every day, and has interviews with really interesting guys. And I recommend his channel for you anytime. And yeah, have a good week, everybody. And we'll see you in the next interview next week.